Geological Sub-Saharan Europe and Time Divisions Africa Mediterranean Holocene 10 Cool IRs. Siberia and East Asia 100.000 1.000.000 2.000.000 3 million Z lutetium 5000.000. Middle Stone Sea and Age Upper Paleolithic A Impiolb Paleolithic IMOUSTERIANJ Poorly AA First Chopper Chopping tool Complex 7 Copyright Cloth 4 2 3 asterisk 4 5 6 7 CLO 5 2 3 I asterisk 5 6 7 B 6 6 3x 4x SX 6x 7x 8x 19x OK they are O U Pode.th. D pounds C dating methods WCLJ Stoies Heavy Ages Figure 16.10 Chronology and the tempo of cultural change during the Pleistocene, in calibration of hominoid evolution. Gross culture stratigraphic entities are shown in relation to a logarithmic timescale after J. L. Isaac in Bishop C. Miller eds 1c 72, pages 381430. 395. Methodology and African Prehistory. I 960. 1920. Greater than I 880. Air temperature code WMC 010 1900. East Turkana Rudolf Camula stratigraphy summed up in figure 16.10, which is due to Brock and Isaac 1974 concerns 325 meters of deposits spread over the period extending from about 3,500,000 to 1,500,000 years according to Bowen, Brock, Isaac and Vondra, 1975. Legend 1. Thermal MBXIMUM of 1942. Little Ice Age 3. Younger Dry AS Cold Interval for Present Interglacial Holocene 5. Last Previous Interglacial EMIANBTOLA IDIO 3 AS 6. Earlier Pleistocene Interglacials 02.4680 C 900 greater than the last 10 teak. LATITUD air temperature or temp I-20 225 x 30. Global ice volume milliliters asterisk 4 10 ccc the last 10 asterisk tears 10 cd the last aisle stairs low asterisk exclamation point asterisk the UST 10 asterisk tears. Figure 16. I generalized trends in global climate for the past million years. A changes in the 5-year average surface temperatures over the region 0 to ADN during the last 2 years Mitchell, 1963. B. Winter Severity Index for Eastern Europe during the last 1,000 years Lamb, 1969. C. Generalized mid-latitude Northern Hemisphere air temperature trends during the last 15,000 years, based on changes in shorelines Lamarche, 1974. Marginal fluctuations in alpine and continental glaciers Denton and Carlin, 1973. And shifts in vegetation patterns recorded in pollen spectra Van der Hamen et al. 1971. D. Generalized Northern Hemisphere air temperature trends during the last 1,000 years, based on mid-latitude sea surface temperature and pollen records and on worldwide sea level records. E. Variations in global ice volume during the last 1,000 years as recorded by changes in isotopic composition of fossil plankton in deep sea core V 28238. Shackleton and Opdyke, 1973. 39 degrees. Chronological framework, African pluvial and glacial epochs. Hadar, Central Afar Ethiopia. Finally, the formations at Hadar in Central Afar, which contain hominids and a wealth of fossils and which have been studied by the International Afar Research Expedition IARE, are 3 million years old according to Johansen and Tybe and others 1974, 1975. In a few years' time the work actively pursued in these parts of East Africa will make it possible to suggest another theory of climatic evolution based on sedimentology and plant and animal ecology, and taking into account the intervention of tectonic and volcanic factors. Intensive studies have been made of other parts of Africa, such as the Sadr Alaman et al., 1959, Alaman, 1975 B. The Nile Valley Vendorf, 1968. Butzer and Hansen, 1968, D. Heinzelin, 1968, G. Gengak, 1968, said, in Press Chap Coppens, 1965, Servant, 1973 and North Africa. The HE climatic variations proposed are based on the succession of sedimentations and bed lowerings of the newer, or the successions of L fauna. Failing a radiometric or magnetostratigraphic dating, it is not yet possible to correlate these variations with the European glacial fluctuations. Conclusion: a feature of the Upper Cenozoic over the past 5 million years is the accentuation of the thermal gradients of the globe combined with considerable climatic changes in the course of time. This accentuation has led to considerable variations in temperature at high latitudes and hence to glacial and interglacial periods. At intertropical latitudes thermal fluctuations were somewhat attenuated, but atmospheric circulations, disturbed by the strengthening or weakening of the polar fronts, brought about considerable variations in the distribution and quantity of rainfall, which helped to change profoundly the environment of the different climatic zones, periodically modifying the geographical and plant environment in which the fauna lived and in which hominids developed. These climatic variations establish the rhythm of the evolution of Africa more clearly than do the glaciations in Europe. What should be borne in mind in this brief survey of the state of our knowledge concerning climatic variations and dating in Africa is the need for continuing observations and measurements before fitting our heterogeneous knowledge into the rigid framework of a theory. On the other hand, we see the importance of the time scales of the various manifestations of climatic change. Care should be taken to place each observation and each phenomenon within the correct time scale. By way of conclusion, this is illustrated in Figure 16.11 taken from the volume of the National Academy of Sciences 1975 in which 5 examples of climatic variations are given for time scales ranging from a century to a million years. 397. Exo lutetium Z lutetium 001 V lutetium -1 O lutetium Z lutetium UO 0 111 H5 V greater than underscore is tilde 3P 3S TFI V geomagnetic reversals epoch IEs normally S them a reverso I reversed 15 then R then event LASCHAM JARAM by LL OLOUVAI KAENA MAM MOTI COCHII Nunavak OLOUVAI 8 ASIN 0 10 Basin TEKOR AFM LOTHAGAM Silk AANA POI Basalt S lutetium O ** 3 degrees so LOT East RUVO LFBASIN ILEREDKOOBIFORA ZOI J _TUF circumflex accent TUF S ROTUF U OC30Z3 1 GE 0 USNO formation X TU vertical line then KALABONFM MURSIFM Bavaria VLA CHAMBIX fauna SOLILAHAC fauna asterisk them ALOUDEYRESINZELLs fawn / SENEZE fauna Lee COUCED fauna per Yeroki and EVR they fauna per Ye asterisk ETOUAIREs fauna VIALETE Northern Italy circumflex accent asterisk plus Villafranca DASDI fauna asterisk I asterisk America IS1 1 COSOMTNs ZVON Tahama Hagerman -1 I1 white cone I Z -1 underscore J Anole X O HEM 398 Figure 16.1 to radiometric and paleomagnetic aspects of the Pliocene-Pleistocene time range in eastern Africa, southwestern Europe and western North America. The very important successions afforded by exposures in the Ilha and Qhi areas, East Rudolph Basin, are still under investigation and, as the results are incomplete, their respective columns have been left blank after F. Clark Howell, 1972. 399. Hominization, General Problems. Part I. Cotton's The Paleontological Data. MBN is a MMML, to be more precise, a placental mammal. LH belongs to the order of the primates. Paleontological criteria: the primates, of which MBN forms part, differ from other placental mammals on account of their precocious brain development, improved stereoscopic vision and reduced face size, the replacement of claws by flat nails, and the opposability of the thumb to the other fingers. The primates, which are divided into prosimians and simians. MBN comes under the second category, which is characterized by increased stature, the displacement of the eye sockets on the face with the resulting improvement of vision, and the independence of the temporal cavities. There was a sudden proliferation of forms among these simians in the Upper Oligocene about 30 million years ago, which suggests that the differences occurring in the Hominidae family may date back to that epoch. In order to be able to write the history of these Hominidae, we accordingly have to search among the simian fossils of the past 30 million years, in a bid to identify those whose evolutionary tendencies point towards the features which typify us as the genus Homo, as bipeds, with all that this implies by way of changes in the feet, legs and pelvis, the orientation of the skull, the proportions of the spinal column, the development of the brain case, the reduction of the face, the rounding of the dental arch, the reduction in size of the canine teeth, and the hollowing of the palate. The Proteopithecus of the Upper Oligocene displays discrete signs of some of these tendencies, which is why some authors have been prematurely enthusiastic in regarding him as being akin to ourselves. The tendencies that can be observed in Ramapithecus are more relevant. 1. The mammals are the highest of the 5 classes of the vertebrata, and placental mammals are the highest of the MMML class. They have a new organ, the placenta, which enables the fetus to breathe and be fed. 7. Hominization, general problems. In that the brain appears to have grown in volume to 400 cc, the face is reduced in size, the dental arch is rounded and the incisors and canines are likewise smaller and are implanted vertically. Since another primate, Ardopithecus, for which we have a complete skeleton, has the same skull features and the pelvis of an occasional biped, it can be presumed that the postcranial skeleton of Ramapithecus, which we do not yet possess, may also bear the same first signs of adaptation of the body to the upright posture. However, there can be no ambiguity about the evolutionary tendencies of the Australopithecines, since these permanent bipeds have human feet, very modern hands, a distinctly larger capacity brain, small canines and a smaller face, and can accordingly only be regarded as hominidae. At the end of the chain, the genus Homo differs from the Australopithecines by his increased stature, improved erect stance, increased brain capacity, which may be as much as 800 cc in the very earliest species, and a change in dentition, with a relative growth of the front teeth compared with the side teeth as a result of the change from a vegetarian to an omnivorous diet. It can be seen that the paleontological approach involves a study of anatomy which is at once comparative and dynamic. Since paleontologists know that evolution always moves from the simplest to the most complicated and from the undifferentiated to the specialized, they have to find fossils that are both sufficiently comparable and, with due regard to their geological age, are sufficiently different from MBN whose ancestors they are seeking. The oldest primates are the prosimians. At the present time, this group is represented by the lemurs of Madagascar, the tarsiers of the Philippines and Indonesia, and a small galago of tropical Africa. From the Eocene to onwards, the simians divided into 2 main groups, the Platyrrhina or NEW world monkeys, with a broad nasal septum and 36 teeth, and the Catarrhina or Old World monkeys, with a narrow nasal septum and 32 teeth. The Catarrhina are divided in their turn into a number of families, the Cercopithecidae, the Pongidae, the Hominidae, the Hylobaetidae, the Ardopithecidae, the Gigantopithecidae, and so on. 20 to 40 million years ago, lack of evidence makes it difficult to see what was afoot in the Eocene. And 2. We recall that geological time is divided into the primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary eras. The primates, which emerged at the end of the secondary era some 70 million years ago, developed during the Tertiary and Quaternary eras. The Tertiary is divided into 5 main stages, these being, from the oldest to the most recent, the Paleocene, the Eocene, the Oligocene, the Miocene and the Pliocene. The Quaternary has only 2 stages, the Pleistocene and the Holocene. 3. This chapter has a glossary giving the meaning of the different scientific terms used. 401. Methodology and African prehistory. Oligocene ages, between 20 and 40 million years ago, but a rich site at Fayoum, about 60 miles south of Cairo, investigated by numerous expeditions, has yielded up signs of an incredible variety of primates: Paropithecus, Apodium, Oligopithecus, Proteopithecus, Geolopithecus, Egyptopithecus. Paropithecus and Apodium are notable as having 3 premolars, that is, 36 teeth like the Prochimians and the Platyrrhines New World monkeys. Amphipithecus, a third type, found in Burma, with a similar morphology, belongs to the same group. But many other traits cause this group of primates to belong rather to the Catarrhines, characterized by 32 teeth. They are in fact ancestors of the Catarrhines, or Protocatarrhines. Thus our first look backwards reveals an introductory stage, the Protocatarrhine, with 36 teeth and existing in 3 types: Paropithecus, Amphipithecus, Apodium, Oligopithecus, Proteopithecus. Geolopithecus and Egyptopithecus have 2 premolars and are true Catarrhines with 32 teeth. Oligopithecus is a small primate about 1/3 of a meter high, with primitive type molars, regarded as the ancestor of the Cercopithecines. It is the oldest known primate with 32 teeth. Geolopithecus has huge canines and molars with independent tubercles and may be a forerunner of the gibbons. Closely related are the Pliopithecii of the European Miocene and Limnopithecines of the Kenyan and Ugandan Miocene. Egyptopithecus also has large canines and heteroform premolars. For it is the ancestor of the Dryopithecines found all over the Old World, and perhaps also of the chimpanzees. Proteopithecus has less robust molars and a front lower premolar with 1½ tubercles. This has been seen as foreshadowing the homomorphy of the 2 lower premolars, which is characteristic of the hominidae. Is this, then, the ancestor of the group, or, more modestly, the an ancestor of the large monkeys and of men, or is it already a member of the Pongidae family? Whatever the pattern of relationships, this period is interesting as proof that in Northeast Africa, 30 million years ago, there was a great variety of small primates foreshadowing all the primates of today: Cercopitheci, Pongidae, Hyloleatae and Hominidae. The HE guidelines had been laid down. For premolars and molars have crowns which are divided by ridges into small bumps which are called cusps or tubercles. Among the large monkeys, Pongidae, the first lower molar resembles a canine and has only 1 cusp. Among the Hominidae, this tooth resembles the second premolar and has 2 cusps. In the first case, we speak of the heteromorphism of the premolars, and in the second of their homomorphism. 402. Hominization, general problems. Prior to 20 million years ago, in this period, other steps forward were taken. In Kenya and Uganda, L.S. Leakey discovered a small primate, Caniopithecus africanus, which he classified as a member of the Hominidae. It is 20 million years old, with a rounded dental arch, diverging upper cheek teeth 5 and slightly protruding jaws. 6. Its incisors and canines are vertical, the crowns of the premolars and molars low. MENY commentators, however, have seen characteristics here of the large monkeys. Leakey also discovered, at Fort Turner in Kenya, what he considers another species of the same type, Caniopithecus wickeri, dated as 14 million years old. Other experts, interpreting its characteristics differently or basing their opinion on other characteristics than those selected by Leakey, class this specimen also as one of the Pongidae. But Leakey has brought cultural arguments to bear, too, in support of his new candidate. At the Pan-African Conference at Dakar in 1967, he showed fragments of basalt whose natural cutting edges bore traces of use. And at Addis Ababa in 1971 he affirmed that most of the animal bones discovered in association with Caniopithecus wickeri had been artificially broken. The HE imagination is certainly very struck by the thought of this little African primate selecting sharp or pointed stones with which to prepare his food. Theoretically, at least, it is not impossible. Since 1934 we have known about another primate, Ramapithecus punjabicus, 8 to 14 million years old, discovered in the Neo-Pliocene formations of North India and Pakistan. Simons of Yale has re-examined it and connected it with remains attributed to Ramapithecus. IR. Punjabicus is a small primate weighing from about 18 to 36 kilograms. Its face is squat, its lower jaw thick with a vertical attachment. It has small incisors and small canines vertically set, with late-growing molars and premolars similar to each other in the lower jaw. Because of all these things, many, though not all, experts classify Ramapithecus punjabicus as belonging to the Hominidae. Simons has even taken it, together with Geniopithecus from East Africa and a few scattered discoveries in China and Europe, as evidence for a pre-hominid Miocene area covering the whole of the Old World. He was not wrong, in fact, since searches in the past 3 years have led to the discovery of the same Ramapithecus in Turkey, Turkey and Hungary. While considerable information on this primate has been obtained from new material from Pakistan gathered by the Deep Pilbeam expedition. 5. Premolars and molars are known as cheek teeth. 6. Prognathism means protrusion of the jaw and refers to the projection of all or part of the face beneath the nose. 403. Methodology and African prehistory. China and India have produced an enormous primate, Gigantopithecus. It is called Gigantopithecus blacki in China and Gigantopithecus bilaspirensis in India, where its age is estimated at several million years. Its incisors are small, its canines, while not large, are not hominid. The first lower molar has 2 cusps. The cheek teeth are big and strong and show considerable wear. The face is squat, the lower jaw powerful with a long vertical attachment. But today most scholars reject it as a possible ancestor of an. Searches in Greece under the direction of L. D. Bonus have brought to light the million-year-old primate, Auranopithecus macedoniensis, which could be the ancestor of Gigantopithecus. Finally, 12 million years ago, another primate, Auranopithecus, used to swing from branch to branch in the forests of Tuscany and also perhaps of Kenya. It was discovered by Gervais in 1872, and described by a gifted Swiss paleontologist, Johannes H. Virchler, who took over some excavations at Grosset in Tuscany and had the good fortune to find an almost complete skeleton of Auranopithecus ambulii. This had a squat face, with a nose that stands out in profile. It has small incisors and canines and 2 cusps on the first lower premolar. Its pelvis is that of a biped, but its forelimbs are extremely long. Auranopithecus may possibly be a small hominid, but it is one of the brachial type of primates, 7 adapted to life in the trees. So we have Geniopithecus africanus, Geniopithecus wickeri, Ramapithecus punjabicus, Gigantopithecus blacki, Gigantopithecus bilaspirensis and Auranopithecus ambulii. For the moment, the important thing is not to know who is whose ancestor. Several different lines are in any case represented here. But, taken together, these 4 types from the Miocene and Pliocene epochs give a picture of a forest-dwelling primate who seems for the first time to come and seek some of his food in the open areas around lakes and on the banks of rivers. This emergence from the forest will naturally entail new modes of life. And at the same time there occurs a reduction in the size of the foreteeth and of the face, and a tendency for the first premolar, no longer hampered by the canine, to develop 2 cusps instead of 1. This is a foreshadowing of the conquest of the plain, and, at the same time, of bipedalism, walking on 2 feet. 8. 10 to R million years ago. From the Pliocene to the Pleistocene epochs, between 10 and 1 million years ago, we find ourselves in the presence of the Australopithecines, a group at 7. Brachiation is a mode of locomotion in trees consisting of moving from branch to branch suspended by the forelimbs. 8. Bipedalism is a mode of locomotion on land consisting of moving in an erect posture on the 2 hind limbs. 404. Hominization, general problems. Once very varied in form and very localized. A brief account of their discovery will help us to see both their history and their geography. Chronology. It was in 1924 that Professor Raymond Dart described and named the first Australopithecus. It was the skull of a child of about 5 or 6 years old, found in the breccia of a cave at Tong in Bechuanaland. From 1936 on, This discovery was followed up by many others made by Professor Dart and Professor Philotobias in 4 caves in the Transvaal, Sturtfontein, Swartkrans, Kromdraai near Johannesburg, and Makapan's Gap near Potgietersrust. In 1939 the German professor, L. Cole Larsen, extended the distribution of Australopithecus to East Africa by discovering the jawbone at Geruza or Littoral to the northeast of Lake Eyasi in Tanzania. Work has recently been resumed on this deposit by Mariliki with considerable success, since she has discovered a very interesting series of fossil hominidae which can probably be related to the Australopithecines. Then came the celebrated researches of the Leakey family in the gorge at Oldaway in Tanzania. Since 1955 they have produced nearly 70 specimens attributable to the hominidae, some of them very remarkable. In 1964, Leakey and G. Isaac brought the number of sites in Tanzania up to 3. Then they found an Australopithecus jaw near Lake Natron. Then the finds shifted towards the north. In 1967 an international expedition resumed excavations at paleontological sites in the west of the lower Ombo River Valley in Ethiopia. There were 3 teams, a French team led by Professor C. Berge and Y. Cottons, an American one under Professor Clark Howell, and a Kenyan one directed by L. S.B. Leakey and his son Richard. These sites, discovered by French travelers at the beginning of this century, had been excavated in 1932 and 1933 by an expedition from the National Museum of Natural History in Paris, led by C. Berge. During its very first month the new expedition was fortunate enough to find the first Australopithecus jaw that the sites had produced. Numerous other finds followed. In the course of 9 seasons, the French and American missions made exceptional discoveries, the remains of about 400 hominidae. The Kenyan team left Ombo in 1968 to explore the east banks of Lake Turkana in Kenya under the leadership of R. Leakey. In the course of 10 seasons this team collected more than 100 hominid fragments, some of them very important. Meanwhile, on the southwest shores of the same lake, an American expedition from Harvard, under the leadership of B. Patterson, was excavating 3 small sites of which 2 produced hominid remains. The team from Bedford College, London, whose aim was to draw up a 405 methodology and African prehistory geological map of the basin of Lake Baringo in Kenya, discovered 5 sites containing paleoanthropological remains. In 4 seasons, starting in 1973, an international expedition led by Maurice Type, Steve Coppens and Donald C. Johansson to Hadar in the Ethiopian Afar region, discovered more than 300 paleoanthropological fragments belonging to 1 or 2 hominid forms in an exceptional state of preservation. A second mission to the Afar region, as a follow-up to the first, subsequently collected a skull which can be attributed to a Pithecanthropus. Lastly, in 1975 and 1976, after 9 years painstaking excavations, Jean Chabalone uncovered 3 interesting fragments in association with Old Owen and Ashuli and industries at Melka near Addis Ababa. All these discoveries, taken together, limit the distribution of Australopithecus to the eastern and southern parts of Africa. The oldest of these sites is Angora, 9 to 12 million years old, in the basin of Lake Baringo in Kenya. So far it has yielded only an upper molar belonging to a hominid of unidentified type, but high hopes are entertained for the results of future excavations. The molar is low-crowned like those of Ramapithecus, but the structure of the cusps is like that found in the Australopithecines and it may be a Savanthopithecus. A molar has also been discovered in another deposit in the Baringo Basin, at Lucano, which is dated to between 6 and 6.5 million years. In this instance the find consists of the rearmost lower molar very similar to that of Australopithecus. At Lokagam, southwest of Lake Turkana in Kenya, Patterson discovered a fragment of lower jaw with a tooth embedded in it. The form suggests an Australopithecine, and related vertebrates also found point to a Pliocene age that may be placed from 5 to 16 million years ago. TWO other sites in Kenya, Cimarron in the basin of Lake Baringo and Kanapoi in that of Lake Turkana, have yielded the hominid temporal bone and humerus respectively. The Littoral deposit in Tanzania was dated from at least 350,000 years ago. Its fossil hominidae are remarkably comparable to those collected at Hadar in the Ethiopian Afar. which are datable to between 280000 and 320000 years ago. The HEOMO sites consist of sedimentary strata nearly a mile in depth, made up of a succession of fossil-bearing sands, clays and volcanic deposits which can be dated with certainty. It has been worked out that the strata range from over 4 million years old at the bottom to less than 1 million years old at the top. The hominid remains are found from the 3 to 0,000 level to the top, in other words, continuously over more than 2 million years. The hominid yielding sites east of Lake Turkana stretch over the period between 3 and 1 million years ago. 406. Hominization, general problems. Comparison of fauna has recently given an estimated age of 2 to 5 million to more than 3 million years for the oldest caves in South Africa, Makapan's Gap, Fonte producing Australopithecine remains, but this date is still much disputed. The Olduvai Gorges in Tanzania produce remains of hominidi and their activities throughout the 100 yards or so of the deposit, dated as being 1800,000 years old at the base. TWO other late South African caves with Australopithecine remains, Swartkrans and Kromdraai, are about the same age as the oldest levels at Olduvai, or even a little older to 2 to 5 million years. Probably the youngest Australopithecines have come from Chusodonge in the Baringo Basin in Kenya, the Lake Natron site in Tanzania and perhaps the Tongbretia in South Africa. They are scarcely more than 1 million years old. The Australopithecines therefore seem to appear about 6 or 7 million years old, and to disappear about 1 million years ago. What have these sites given us, then? Several kinds of hominid, some contemporary with one another. One is called Australopithecus robustus, or Paranthropus, or Singanthropus. Another is called Australopithecus gracilis, or Australopithecus proper, or Pleistocrathus or Paraustralopithecus. The third is called Homo habilis, or Australopithecus habilis. The fourth is called Homo erectus, or Talanthropus, or Meganthropus. Australopithecus robustus. This has been found in caves in South Africa from 2 to 5 million years old, in Ombo in Ethiopia and east of Lake Turkana in Kenya, that Olduvai about 1,800,000 years ago, and at Chusodonge 1,100,000 years ago. It is called robustus because it is in fact larger and stronger than the others. The form of the skull corresponds to a powerful set of masticatory equipment, and the molars and premolars are very large. There is a strong lower jaw, well-set muscles for chewing, a powerful zygomatic arch, 9 and a marked sagittal ridge for the temporal muscles. Degrees. There is no forehead. The HE face is high and flat and the foreteeth small to facilitate lateral chewing movements. The HE lower jaw has therefore a very high attachment, to augment the masticatory action of the masseter and pterygoid muscles. The body is stronger than that of the other species of Australopithecus. It is about 1 to 5 meters tall, and its weight is estimated at between about 36 and 66 kilograms. It was not perfectly adapted to walking on 2 feet. The apophyses of the femur is small and its neck long. Brain size is estimated at 530 cc both for the Swartkrans and for the Olduvai 9. The zygomatic arch is the skull bone joining the forehead to the face. 10. The sagittal ridge is a bone growth on the top of the skull forming a ridge similar to the crest of a helmet. 407. Methodology and African prehistory. Specimens. The HE development of the cerebellum is to be noted. It and OY indicate increased control of movement, for example, manipulation and locomotion. Australopithecus gracilis comes from Makapan's Gap and Fonte in South Africa, and is also thought to have been found at Ombo in Ethiopia, Garuza or Litola in Tanzania and Lotagum in Kenya. It is said to have been just over 1 to 2 meters tall and to have weighed from just under 18 to just over 32 kilograms. The face is more prominent than in Australopithecus robustus. The HE eyebrow ridges 1-1 are fairly developed and support a comparative developed forehead. The incisors are spatula and set vertically, the canine small and similar to incisors. The HE cheek teeth diverge to form a parabolic dental arch, and are large, with round cusps and thick enamel, and worn right down. Even if this Australopithecus had a more varied diet than Australopithecus robustus, it must still have been basically vegetarian. The thickness of the lower jaw and the enamel, the wearing of the teeth down to the gums, the shortness of the face and the size of the premolars and molars all indicate a powerful masticatory system. The teeth are late in cutting, and this, together with the thickness of the enamel, signifies adaptation to a longer adolescence and to a longer life altogether. Brain size varies from 428 to 485 cc, the mean of the South African form. The long bones, especially the humerus and scapula, are reminders of ancestors who swung from branch to branch. But Australopithecus gracilis is a permanent biped. Homo habilis was described at Olduvai in Tanzania in 1964, and may have been encountered again at Ombo in Ethiopia, to the east of Lake Turkana, and at Pode in Kenya. The cheek teeth are flatter than in the examples of Australopithecus gracilis found in South Africa. They are also longer and narrower. Estimates based on the parietal bones give Homo habilis a brain capacity of 680 cc, while a skull for East Lake Turkana has a capacity of almost 800 cc. The evolutionary tendencies of teeth and brain thus place it nearer to us than Australopithecus. Apart from the skull, however, the rest of the skeleton 12 is reminiscent of Australopithecus gracilis. The clavicle in particular suggests ancestors who swung from branch to branch, as in the case of Australopithecus gracilis. The height of Homo habilis is estimated at between about 1 to 2 and 1 to 4 meters. 11. The eyebrow ridges are the bony upper edges of the eye sockets. 12. Postcranial skeleton is the term used for the whole skeleton minus the skull. 408. Hominization, general problems. Homo erectus finally, that Swartkrans in South Africa 2 to 5 million years old at Olduvai in Tanzania 1 to 5 million years and east of Lake Turkana in Kenya 1 to 5 million years at Melkokonchar, that Bodo, in Ombo in Ethiopia between 500,000 and 150,000 years. Excavators have discovered what they call Homo erectus, that is, hominidally more advanced in the scale of evolution than any of those that went before. In 1949, that Swartkrans, Broom and Robinson isolated some bones which they attributed to a more hominid form called Telanthropus capensis. In 1957 Robinson had the idea of attributing it to the Pithecanthropines and labeling it Homo erectus. In 1969 R.O.N. Clark, Howell and Brain, handling the Swartkrans specimens, noticed that the skull of the Australopithecus robustus, SK 847, fitted perfectly on the upper jaw of Telanthropus. This combination produces an interesting picture confirming Robinson's suppositions. A prominent eyebrow ridge 13 is surmounted by a receding forehead, corresponding to the lack of forehead in Australopithecus robustus. The skull has large frontal sinuses. 14 Post-orbitoconstriction 15 is fairly marked. The bones of the nose are prominent. The dental arch is short, indicating a small mandible with lower vertical attachment. And finally the dentition and structure of the facial skeleton bring this specimen close to Homo, and in particular to Homo erectus. That Olduvai, hominid 13 has dental equipment 20% smaller than Homo habilis and a smaller lower jaw. Hominid 16 has a prominent eyebrow ridge, and leafy and toes bias speak of Homo erectus. However, while the status of these two fossils is uncertain, the same is by no means true of hominid 13, which undoubtedly represents the skull cap of Homo erectus. To the east of Lake Turkana in Kenya, a large number of discoveries can be related to this progressive species of the genus Homo. In particular, the recent crop of 3 skulls from different dates is a very fine illustration of the growth of evolutionary tendencies in this species. It is worth recalling that a recent dating of the oldest Japanese Pithecanthropine, the skull of a child found at Mojokerto, gives an age of 19,000 years, but it is arguable whether it is really in Homo erectus. Tobias and von Koenigswald, having compared the original remains from Java and Tanzania at Cambridge, concluded that the oldest Homo habilis is morphologically the same as Meganthropus paleohavonicus and perhaps as Hemianthropus palei from China, and that the most recent Homo 13 and the eyebrow ridge is surmounted by a bony protraction. It is known as a supraorbital teres. 14. Sinuses are cavities. 15. The HE skull is compressed laterally behind the eye sockets. This is what is known as post-orbitoconstriction. 409. Methodology and African prehistory. habilis hominid 13 is morphologically the same as Pithecanthropus IV, Sanjarandi and Telanthropus capensis. Industries for the first time in the history of primates. Such remains are found in association with artifacts. The French expedition to the Okampo site in 1969 turned up several tools of stone and bone over 2 million years old. The following year the Kenyan expedition east of Lake Turkana discovered a comparable production of stone and bone tools in a volcanic stratum dated as 2 million years old. In 1978 the French and American expeditions at Okampo found similar archaeological remains over 2 million years old. So in 3 years, through the discoveries made in the Pleistocene basin of Lake Turkana, the age of the first manufactured tools had been pushed back to more than 2 to 5, perhaps even 3 million years, thus adding over a million years to the time in which such activity is known to have existed. The first manufactured articles in the world consist of a large number of fragments deliberately chipped and used for their cutting edge, pebbles on which a point or sharp edge has been chipped at and improved, and bones and teeth either shaped in some way or used as they stood. If they lent themselves to direct use, as in the case of the canine teeth of hippopotamus or suidae, for example, these tools may be divided into a number of types, each represented by several examples. This indicates that the shape had been deliberately worked out and sought after. It was the fruit of experience transmitted from one generation to another, implying a certain degree of social life. This means not that we are 2 to 5 million years away from the actual origin of the tool, but rather that we are here approaching the limits of awareness of it. Further in the past, it is indistinguishable from natural objects. The Makapan's Gap in South Africa, an industry of tools made of bone, horn and teeth, has been brought to light. This production has been named osteodonto-keratic because of the materials it uses, and its recent attempts to correlate the South African capes with the great East African sites proved successful. It may turn out to be very ancient. At any rate, one can make the same observations as in the Lake Turkana basin. The various types of tool are mass-produced, which shows that the process was no longer in its early stages. At Hadar H. Roche recently uncovered a shaped pebble industry, similar to that at Oldaway, at a level which it is not impossible to date to 250,000 years ago. From the oldest deposits at Oldaway onwards 180,000 years tools are to be found everywhere, in large quantities and always the same. The particular frequency of pebble implements has earned the industry the name. 410. Hominization, general problems of pebble culture or old out formed from the place name Oldaway. One day, working in the oldest level at Oldaway, Dr. Leakey noticed a large accumulation of basalt pebbles. As the dig progressed, he saw that instead of being scattered about at random they were arranged in little heaps forming a circle. Each heap probably served to wedge a post into the ground. Imagine a ring of posts or hoops with skins or vegetation stretched between them, and one is naturally tempted to see here the remains of some kind of building. Oh, and you would therefore be in the presence of a dwelling some 2 million years old. In the oldest old doubt on level 1 to 5 million years at Melkakoncher, near Addis Ababa, Jean-Dal alone recently came upon a rather similar structure. Right in the middle of an inhabited area strewn with tools, he suddenly uncovered a round surface about 2 to 5 meters in diameter, without any tools and raised about 1/3 of a meter above the surrounding level, with a through or gutter some 8 meters long. A few heaps of stones again suggest the presence of posts. It has been suggested that Australopithecus robustus might be the male of Australopithecus gracilis, that Homo habilis was an Australopithecus gracilis somewhat younger and more developed than the one found in South Africa, that Telanthropus or Homo erectus from Swartkrans might come within the lower limits of the variations found in Australopithecus robustus at the same site, that Meganthropus javanicus was an Australopithecine, even that certain Australopithecines e.g. that Oldaway and Swartkrans were Pithecanthropines. From this apparent confusion one clear argument nevertheless emerges, namely that it is in the midst of the Australopithecine area, at first limited to East and South Africa and subsequently extending with Australopithecus in the same or more advanced form to Asia south of the Himalayas, that there appear the genus Homo and the deliberately fabricated tool. The latter very quickly becomes the hallmark of its maker. Various types of tools are quickly developed for particular purposes. Tool making is taught. Finally, dwelling places are constructed. It is in this sense that the human race may be said to have its origins in Africa. Conclusion in the end thus emerges, at the end of a very long history, as a primate who one day improves on the tool he has already long been using. Deliberately fabricated tools, together with dwellings, suddenly reveal a thinking being, a being with foresight who teaches and transmits. Who creates the first society and endows it with the first culture. The date of over 2 million years has recently been advanced for certain hominid fossil remains in Java. Worked pebbles from several sites in the south of France have sometimes been said to be equally old. But in the 411 methodology and African prehistory present state of our knowledge, the victory lies with Africa because of the amount and the importance of the very early evidence discovered in the continent. It is as if, 6 to 7 million years ago, in the southeastern quadrant of the African continent, a group of hominidae called Australopithecines came into being, and as if from this polymorphous group there emerged, 2.523 million years ago, the creature, Australopithecus himself, or what may already be called MN, capable of shaping stone and bone, of building huts and of living in small societies. This being, in all his manifestations, thus represents the origin, properly speaking, of Homo Jaber, tool-making MN. The last million years have seen the birth of Homo sapiens, the last few hundreds of years his alarming proliferation. It took 115 years for the world's population to rise from 1 to 2,000 million, in a further 35 years it rose from 2,000 million to 3, in the last 15 years from 3 to 4,000 million, and the acceleration continues. Part IIL. Below the archaeological data, the prehistorian approaches the problem of hominization in Africa from a point of view somewhat different from that of the paleontologist. For him, hominization is the gradual cerebralization that enables man to conceive of, and, by means of ever more elaborate techniques, to equip himself with tools in the widest sense of the term, so diversified and efficient, in order to further his development, as to have had down the ages a cumulative impact on the natural environment sufficient to overthrow all kinds of biological equilibrium. The paleontological evolution leading up to MN does not allow us to point to any definite threshold of hominization. The chipped stone is enough to show the threshold has already been crossed. In a justly famous passage, T.I.L. Hardy-Churton says, MN made his entrance in silence. He moved so quietly, in fact, that when we first begin to notice he is there, revealed by the indelible stone implements providing multiple evidence of his presence, he already covers the entire old world. The prehistorian's attitude is understandable. The real missing link is not the intermediate form between Australopithecines and Pithecanthropines, Neanderthal MN and Homo sapiens, but what comes between shaped stones and bones, and these fossils. The prehistoric industries which have been attributed with absolute certainty to Homo sapiens from the early Paleolithic on, and somewhat doubtfully to Neanderthal MN in the Middle Paleolithic, can be ascribed only hypothetically to the Pithecanthropines and Australopithecines. True, this is perhaps the only scientific hypothesis possible here. But the industry associated with peaking MN is not the same as that found with the Pithecanthropines, and it is again. 412. Hominization, general problems different in Java, Pithecanthropine, Algeria, Atlanthropine, and East Africa. As for the Australopithecines, they are a heterogeneous group among whose members it is still difficult to say which were the probable, or even possible, authors of the osteodonto-keratic and pebble cultures. If, however, there is for the paleontologist the threshold of hominization, the cerebral Rubicon which Professor Alois has defined as a brain capacity of 800 cc, the prehistorian has a technical threshold which, once crossed, opens the path of progress right down to our own times. But before we can define this threshold we have to solve two problems: how and when. The first problem entails eliminating all natural causes and identifying, in the tool, the hand of man. For the second, we need to establish a chronological framework enabling us to date, to within an acceptable degree of approximation, the most remote evidence of human activity. Till now, only Africa has provided anything like a positive solution to these two problems. And, since the theory of monogeny, or a COMMON origin for the whole of the human race, is universally accepted. Africa is currently regarded as the cradle of mankind. This cradle and wheels, as the Abbe Brahe called it, so long whisked to and fro from the peaks of the Pamir to the plains of the Euphrates, has settled down for the moment, then, in East Africa, where, according to theory, everything happened 3 million years ago at least. The Old Testament book of Genesis placed the earthly paradise, Eden, in a landscape of gardens and cultivation. God dedicated Adam to a life of agriculture and stock raising, the Neolithic mode of life in a region that was gradually to reveal the Paleolithic. All chronologies drawn from the scriptures date the creation between 6484 and 3616 years before our era. The Near East may well have been one of the most ancient, if not actually the oldest, center of Neolithization. But it is no longer possible to call it the cradle of mankind. Man made his entrance in silence, and it was the stones he shaped that long afterwards betrayed his existence. The human race made no disturbance in nature when it first appeared. We see it emerge phyletically, exactly like any other species hard. So the prehistorian's responsibility is an enormous one. By identifying the earliest perceptible traces of human activity, he does what paleontology is powerless to do. Through tools, he identifies man. The prehistorian of Africa must begin by answering 3 questions. 1. Are tools the true criteria of hominization? 2. Do they enable us to locate the beginning of hominization? 3. Insofar as they have survived at all, can they be identified with certainty? 1. The data for the solution of this problem come largely from Africa. The Abbe Brahe, struck by the behavior of certain animals, told me towards the end of his life that he doubted whether tools really marked the 413. Methodology and African prehistory. Crossing of the threshold of hominization, and if it might not be better to take art as a criterion. This would amount to distinguishing Homo truly T sapiens / the painter of Luscombe, our direct ancestors, from an earlier series of diligent beings, known as Homo faber. As Adam Tetri has shown, the use of tools other than the natural tools which form part of the body is not peculiar to man, or even to the primates in general. This is proved by the digger wasp and the tailor ant among the insects, the Galapagos finch, the gull, the vulture, the buzzard, and the song thrush among the birds, by the beaver and the sea otter, and by many other examples. The primates. The chimpanzee is closest to man. In its daily life it uses tools and weapons to defend itself against such enemies as snakes, and a fear or defense reflex will lead it to pick up sticks and brandish them. 1/6 This behavior, already observed in zoos and other forms of captivity, was also studied, between 1964 and 1968, in game reserves in Tanzania. Their chimpanzees, living in groups of more than 30 individuals, select twigs with which to dig out termites, use sticks for breaking nests or reaching honey, leaves for scooping up water from hollows in trees, branches as crooks for hooking down bananas. They use stones for breaking fruit and, thrown over or underarm, as an alternative to sticks for chasing off rival predators. And, lastly, they communicate with one another by means of audible signals. Similar observations have been made on gorillas in Rwanda. 1/7 Thus, if tools are to be considered a criterion of hominization, the mere use of something other than the natural tools of the body is not enough. There has to be a deliberate transformation of the object used, a concept which makes possible an affirmative answer to our 3rd question, though not to our 2nd. Tools do not make it possible for us to locate the beginnings of hominization. In the first place, only fossilized bones and stones have come down to us. Without going out of our way for far-fetched ethnographical examples, we may remind ourselves that a human group can perfectly well get all its implements from the vegetable world. The classic example are the Mankipes of the Andaman Islands, and it is as probable as it is incapable of proof that on the wooded plains of the African plateaus, trees provided the first hominids with their first tools. Even as regards fossil bones and teeth, Dart antedated these by attributing to the Australopithecines of the Transvaal an industry based on bones, teeth and horn, which he called the osteodontoceramic culture and which was long disputed. We shall return to it. Within the pebble culture, our Van Rietlo distinguished between split and trimmed pebbles, the first of which, pebbles that have merely been broken, have come to be generally regarded with skepticism. Certainly, if a pebble picked up and thrown by a human hand retains no discernible trace of its being put to this use, the split pebble can easily be just a work of nature. 16. Ca. June 1967. 17. Nat. Geographic. Social, Washington, D.C., October 1971. 414. Hominization. General problems. Waterfalls and waves produce stones that are indistinguishable from those split open by man. The supposed Khufu industry did not survive scrutiny of this kind. The text already partly quoted from T.L. Hardy-Churton contains some big mistakes and a very serious omission. The H.E. passage reads, more fully, M.E.N. made his entrance in silence. H.E. moved so quietly, in fact, that when W.E. first began to notice he is there, revealed by the indelible stone implements providing multiple evidence of his presence, he already covers the entire old world from the Cape of Good Hope to Peking. Already, certainly, he speaks and lives in groups. Already he makes fire. The ND isn't this, after all, exactly what we ought to have expected. Every time some new living form arises before us out of the depths of history, do we not know it arises fully formed and that it is already legion? But Homo locanes does not really seem to have appeared until the time of the Pithecanthropines, nor, before them, at least not in Africa, is there any reliable evidence of the fire mistakenly attributed to Australopithecus/Prometheus, and the indelible stone implements from Oldaway certainly do not indicate the beginning. The variety of form, their number, the deliberateness with which they are reproduced, suggest the completion of a process rather than a beginning. It was the prehistorians of Africa who wanted those extra million years before bed at Oldaway which Ombo and Coolbefore have recently made available to them. And even that does not satisfy us. 3. So we must apply ourselves to solving the third problem, which is to prove human intention in the most rudimentary and simple tools. Only Africa provides material abundant enough for this. There are two main areas of inquiry, bone and stone. A. The osteodontoceramic industry. The H.E. hypothesis suggested by Dart in 1949 was examined by Donald F. Wahlberg in Current Anthropology, February 1970. The Abbé Bray, examining the bones found with the Sinanthropines at Shaoxi, had previously supposed that the Stone Age might have been preceded by a Bone Age. A Prelithic was supposed to have gone before the Paleolithic. Before 1955, when relevant remains were found in South Africa, and before 1959-60 Oldaway, Tanzania 1969 Homo, Ethiopia and 1971 Lake Turkana, Kenya, there was no evidence of stone manufacture in association with Australopithecine sites. Instead, Dart proposed an osteodontoceramic culture based on bones, teeth and horn. Unfortunately, there is no reliable chronology, either relative or absolute, for the Australopithecines of South Africa, though usable chronologies do exist for those of Ethiopia, Kenya and Tanzania. Dart, who maintained the existence of his bone industry from 1949 to 960, based his argument on the examination of baboon and Australopithecine skull selection rather than chance having seemingly accounted for the collection of bones found at Makapan's Gap. There were, for example, 336 humerus bones to 56 femurs, and on cervical vertebrae, which, with cattle skulls, represented 56% of the total collected. According to Dart, the animal bones found in the 415 Methodology and African Prehistory, Figure 17. By paleontological data, breccia of the caves in which Australopithecine was found were refuse, debris from the kitchen of a hunter-predator WHONOW that he stood upright could use his hands to wield tools and weapons. After examining 50 baboon skulls and 6 Australopithecine skulls, Dart declared that 80% showed traces of lesions, caused by blows. The HE blows were usually struck from in front, and some were dual, indicating two-headed weapons. The Makapan's Gap many ungulate humeruses bore traces of having 416 hominization, general problems, been worn down before fossilization, while the other long bones were intact, from which Dart concluded that the typical weapon of the Australopithecine was a bone club, preferably an ungulate humerus. The HE hunter also used jaw bones. Spiral fractures and humerus or shin bones were held to be due to torsional stress and also to imply the agency of the human hand. This had already been suggested by Brouillet and Til Hard-Churton in connection with the synanthropine sites at Shaokaoxian. A fossilized gazella graciliar horn embedded in an antelope's femur and fixed there by calcite thus indicated human action of some kind, whether it was a tool used to split the femur or a tool of which the femur formed the handle. A similar interpretation was given to a hyena's skull with the heel bone of an antelope thrust between the brain pan and the zygomatic arch. All this presupposed an osteodontocerotic stage, first Relithic, then Paleolithic, leading first to the pebble culture and then to biface industries. This would certainly constitute the beginning of a cultural implemental activity. Such a theory was bound to give rise to heated arguments as to which was the hunter and which the hunted. SOME experts considered all the bones, including those of the Australopithecines themselves, to be mere remains left over from the gorgings of carnivores. Others thought they were refuse that had accumulated in hyenas' lairs, though this does not correspond to that animal's habits. Others attributed it all to porcupines. But out of 7159 bone fragments found at Macapan's Gap before 1955 only 200 had been gnawed. Moreover, hyenas lie surrounded by the bones of other hyenas. A site assigned to the Risse-Weirn period was to show that out of a total of 130 animals, 10 were hyenas, whereas at Macapan's Gap, out of 433 specimens, only 17 were hyenas. In the Australopithecine cave, 47 out of 729 separate teeth belonged to hyenas. At the Risse-Weirn site they accounted for 1,000 out of 1,100. But gradually the consensus in favor of the osteodontocerotic industry emerged, though without prejudice to the type of Australopithecine that was to be considered the hunter. The HE theory received support from the coexistence of a stone industry Fonte, 1955. But clinching proof came from the bone industry that Oldaway, excellently described by Mariliki. 18 This discovery is beyond dispute, and prepares the way for the similar industry attributed to the pithecanthropines of Africa, Asia Shaokaoxian and Europe, e.g. Taralba and Ambrono. Throughout prehistoric times there was a kind of bone industry just as there was a stone industry. It is more difficult to analyze but it exists just the same. And it is nowhere more ancient than in Africa, even if a Trilithic stage has not yet been proved. Beat the stone industry. Since the theory of eoliths was abandoned, the fashioned pebbles of what has long been known as the pebble culture have represented the oldest recognized stone industry. It was E. J. Wayland 18. Oldaway Gorge, Volume I.